Hello, and welcome back, my mythology lovers. My name is Teresa, and today you'll be joining me as I walk us through the top 10 most scandalous mythological gods. So strap in, because if there's one thing to know about God, is that they took the idea of a scandal to a whole new level, such as Zeus. I want to eliminate some of the better known names on the list, and this is quite literally all Zeus is known for, aside from the lightning bolts up the ass and the temper tantrums. So, since there's a lot to cover with this guy, let's just run through a list of some of his most legendary BS. Roll the tape. First, resenting Prometheus for giving fire to all humans and his willful disobedience, Zeus chained his ass to a mountain rock and then had an eagle come eat out his liver every single night. It would regenerate by the next morning for a rinse and repeat effect. Second, kind enough to invite the human Ixion to Olympus, Zeus was pissed homeboy was digging his wife. To confirm the suspicion, he made a cloud version of his wife, which Ixion somehow impregnated, which is how Centaurus is born. Anyway, Zeus bound Ixion to a big old spinning wheel that was also on fire and forced him to repeat the phrase, "Repay your benefactor frequently with gentle favors in return for all of eternity." Third up, Lo is born to a king and a nymph and naturally takes up banging Zeus in her free time. Hera, the wife, gets pissed about this, so Zeus makes Lo into a literal cow to hide her. Hera knew he was on some BS and said, "That's mighty fine cow you got there, give it to me for my birthday gift," which he did, but then he snuck the cow Lo away, and in response Hera sent gladflies to always chase and sting Lo forever. But wait, there's more! Zeus's mortal son Tantalus pisses him off by feeding his son to the gods for some reason. Zeus sent Tantalus to the underworld in a pool of water surrounded by fruit branches. If he tried to reach the fruit, it moved away. He tried to drink the water, it drained. So he was left hungry and thirsty forever, tantalized. Get it? Get it? The list of Zeus's pettiness is endless. He truly is the world's most dramatic god. And speaking of drama, Izanagi and Izanami not only create the universe, but teach us to let the dead lie. The Shinto creation story begins with Izanagi and Izanami, the ma and pa of the soon-to-come Shinto gods. These two were new parents to the whole universe thing, you know? They had a hard time figuring certain things out, as one would. What is matter? What are we? How do we get this party started? The basics. Well, unsure of how to create order from chaos, they decided to F around and find out by plunging a jewel-encrusted spear into the gulf between heaven and earth. Drops supposedly fall from this spear, and those created land, thus environment and life with it. Now in a lush paradise, these two begin popping them out like crazy. Unfortunately, our girl Izanami is burnt to death, giving birth to the fire godchild. Izanagi is devastated, so he visits the land of the dead, ladies never settle, intending to bring her back. He finds her down there and begs her to return, but she denies. Well, once some light shines on her face and he sees that she's now a maggot-riddled, rotten corpse, homeboy changes his tune and books it. Shocked that her husband went from groveling to running away from her, she chases him, but her prick ex seals her in the underworld. In spite, she becomes the goddess of the dead and says she's determined to take 1,000 human lives every day to avenge the shame he inflicted. Like your ex nobody likes, he does the petty thing and decides to one-up her and says 1,500 people will be born every day in return. So be careful who you marry. And how about Ray, who banged one out in the tears of that, created the universe and two gods in one go. Before there was anything, there was Ray, also known as Atum. He existed by himself, surrounded by nothingness, and homeboy was lonely, so he decided to end his solitude and create a pantheon of pals, other gods, alongside a universe and world still exist within. So it's from a great jerk that Ray produced this universe and planets, alongside the twin gods Shu and Tefnut. Because of Ray's seed being the origin of the world, male self-pleasure became an act of creation to the ancient Egyptian society. Convinced that their main source of livelihood had come from Atum's seed, they believed it was their duty to keep it alive and, well, flowing. Thus the ceremony we discussed in the top 10 most bizarre traditions from ancient Egypt video, where the pharaoh annually spilled his seed in the Nile. Next is a sultry crocodile-esque goddess. Her name is Malambo. She's believed to be the goddess of rivers and fertility to the Zulus and South Africans alike, supposedly even dissuading many from traveling near water. She's often depicted as a large crocodile-esque creature, but her true form is also a water snake. But it could be a stunningly beautiful and insatiable woman who could seduce any man. Once she was welcome to move into his home, it said all male relatives would soon die. She is said to have the power to give wealth, but equally bring about great misfortune, especially to the men that fall her victim. See, our girl Mamlambo eats the face and brains of her victims, but it's been said if you catch her without injury, she will gift her captors with great riches to set her free. Conspiracies stirring communities about those in the past who might have succeeded. Anyway, Zulu women have been known to keep river snakes as good luck charms for seduction. Another god characterized as an animal is Babi, an Egyptian baboon god, because you may not know this, but it wasn't just cats they revered and worshipped, but also baboons. They were a huge part of everyday life, working on police forces as well as being companions. They were respected and integral to Egyptian society. Bobby was a fierce and bloodthirsty baboon god and said to have full control over light and darkness, and he will be the one to open the sky for the king, seeing as his phallus is the only key to unlock heaven's door. It's also the mast for the ferry boat to said afterlife. This virility symbol is carried over into a later spell where, in order to ensure successful sexual intercourse in the afterlife, a man must identify his sexuality to Bobby before passing through. Okay, anyways, as early as the Old Kingdom, Bobby represented supernatural aggression to which the monarch aspired. The terrifying god was said to live on human entrails, and thus protection spells were necessary to protect oneself against him, even if actively worshipping the deity. Don't want to be a munch, right? Protecting yourself was the most necessary pre-death, especially during the weighing of the heart ceremony in the Hall of Two Truths, when a person's suitability for paradise was determined. Media always paints her as an eloquent gem, but in reality she's a bitter bee. It's Athena. The story of Medusa is often mistold, painting the young woman as a harlot with poor intentions. In reality, Medusa was an extremely attractive young woman minding her business outside of Athena's temple. It's here the god Poseidon accosts Medusa, forcing her into the temple and taking her against her will. Athena shows up and she's A, pissed that this is happening in her temple, and B, she had a fat crush on Poseidon at the time, so she victim blames poor Medusa for her own assault. This is when the twisted and bitter Athena turns Medusa into the iconic monster image we all know. A head full of snakes and everyone now incapable of even looking at her without turning to stone. That's a pretty traumatic thing to have follow up on what's already a very traumatic event. This is why Medusa is the homage image of women. And let's not forget another story that reminds us that Athena was not a girl's girl. How Arachne's weaving skills were so unparalleled that when she challenged Athena to try and beat her, Athena couldn't, and Arachne decided to weave a drunk Athena on her cloth to really stick it to her. Well, Athena was pissed and made Arachne feel such supernatural levels of guilt, she takes her own life. Athena then says oopsie daisy and gives Arachne a second life as a spider, since she likes spinning and weaving so much. Right. Alekwu is a god that prevents scandal in my opinion, but also causes some of it. This god is popular among the Idoma people of North Nigeria for his protection, maintenance of social order, and settlement of disputes, and more. He's a watchdog of their people, greatly feared for his ability to punish both offender and accomplice of a crime if it is not reported and atonement made within 7 days. Being omnipresent, don't think leaving town's gonna save you. He's able to protect and punish, with distance being no barrier. And after those 7 days are up to make atonement, within 14 to 21 he'll have hunted you down and killed you. This god is seen in a lot of conversations of adultery in Idoma land, as it's one of the most atrocious acts you could commit. Amen, by the way. Alekwu takes vengeance on them in 2 ways. For example, a woman who commits adultery and doesn't confess in 7 days will lose her first male heir and then any remaining heirs. Their deaths will be, to quote, obvious displays an offense has been committed against Alekwu. Also, any man who eats the food of a wife he is known to have cheated on him will be poisoned by it. If she doesn't fess up after all that, then she'll be stuck with paralysis until death unless a ritual cleansing is done, which is an apology to Alekwu. Inability to do so, as said, results in the guilty party kicking the bucket within the 7, 14 to 12 day mark. So remember, keep it in your pants. There's some countries where you'll get murked by a deity because you can't. Next up is one we're all pretty familiar with, the Abrahamic god, aka Dad of Jesus god, and he's probably the youngest god on this list, but that doesn't make him any less scandalous than his older cousins. Many weird stories appear in the Bible and the Torah, and it's still widely worshipped today, so let's talk about him. The story of Abraham and his son Isaac, for example, where God literally dares Abraham to demonstrate his faith to him, an unseen, unproven being, by murking his son. And Abraham's reaction is say less, like an immediate jump to action to drop his son for the disembodied voice. He sits his kid on an altar, grabs a knife, and God has to jump in with the yo, I was just kidding, claiming it was all a test. Childhood memories with dad for Isaac, I guess. Another story is when God is just decimating the city of Sodom, fire, brimstone, all that jazz. As the Jews are fleeing his usual token massacre behavior, God asks them if they can do one of these and not look at his shameful annihilation. Lot's wife can't resist taking a peek at the drama, and as a witness to the destruction, she's turned into a pillar of salt. God knows why. Literally. The story of the Virgin Mary. Yeah, I don't think I gotta break that one down for you. That is a scandal in all capitals with waving red flags. Take it out of biblical context, it gets weirder and worse. The Bible has no shortage of crazy and scandalous stories about about God. Back to Greece to learn about the man who left chaotic footsteps for Zeus to follow in. It's Cronus. Before the Greek pantheon of gods came the pantheon of Titans. The Titans were the result of the two main creation gods Uranus and Gaia, and Cronus was their preeminent and temperamental son. A nice way to gloss over the fact this guy was a raging psychopath. For example, when Daddy Uranus was getting shifty and hiding some of the wife's kids in the bottom of a literal abyss called Tartarus, Gaia decides that maybe it's time her husband's boys got the snip-snip. When she was asking around for a volunteer, Cronus was practically pushing people out of the way. He sliced off his father's junk and tossed it in the sea, where it turned into sea bubbles and spawned Aphrodite. Anyways, after Gaia's Titan kids were freed, Cronus decided to re-imprison them, claim his dad's throne, and marry his own sister Rhea. Gaia, who just sorta lets this happen, pettily tells Cronus one of his own children would eventually overthrow him. Cronus said, "Alright, bet I'll just eat my kids." And like a paranoid lunatic, he did. Every kid his wife popped out, this guy munched up. Eventually, Gaia and Rhea trick the unhinged man-eater by giving him a rock and a baby blanket and hide the true baby, Zeus, to one day fulfill the prophecy. Which he does, and then he becomes even more scandalous than his dad, because a family that train wrecks together stays together. And finally, it's the flighty perv Inanna, an ancient Sumerian goddess representing sex, war, and fertility. This bad bee is known for her prolific sexual desires and messy unions. She's a patron of lions and the planet Venus, and went through a name change at one point, so she's also known as Ishtar. Inanna had a hell of a temper, and she was not the goddess to cross. One man makes the perilous mistake of taking advantage of her sleeping body under a poplar tree. When she woke, in a fit of rage, she turned all the rivers in the world to blood, covered the earth in storms, and tormented everyone with disease. And when she found her attacker, whoo girl! Her consensual lovers didn't have it better though, as she had a tendency to sacrifice or just kill them. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, she tries to seduce King Gilgamesh, but he, while shaken in his boots, refuses her. Guess he had heard the stories of the speckled alala bird whose wings she broke, the lion who she dug a pit for, the horse she had whipped, the shepherd she turned into a wolf, the gardener who she turned into a dwarf. This list can keep going. Pissed about rejection, Inanna released the bull of heaven in an attempt to kill Gilgamesh, but Gilgamesh killed the bull instead. Inanna awkwardly attends the bull's funeral in the underworld, where as she passes through the 7 gates, she has to remove a piece of clothing or jewelry each time, leaving her naked and powerless. Not the brightest bulb in the box, homegirl sits her bare ass on the underworld ruler's throne, and he's not the happiest about that. He punished her by turning her into a human corpse and hanging her on some hooks. Most other gods just sort of watched and shrugged it off, but Enki decided to rescue her, and it would mean someone would have to take her place. Inanna refuses to sacrifice any of her servants, but she doesn't think twice about offering up her husband Dumuzi because he hadn't mourned her enough. Dumuzi's dragged to the underworld by demons, and Inanna has the audacity to mourn him for an eternity. Alrighty, welcome to the end everyone. I hope you enjoyed this adventure through pantheons. Be sure to like and subscribe below to see more Bumblebee content, and comment down below who your favorite gods or pantheons are to study.